In episode number 270 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover the final DLC pack for Injustice 2 and how it blew everyone away.
We also cover Black Adam's DCEU debut.
Disney has everyone by the balls once again with its live-action Star Wars television show.
And we have much more on today's episode of The Reasons I'm Broke.
Hello and welcome to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and so much more. I'm Daniel. If this is your very first episode of the show, Kelli is normally my other host, but she is away on her final week of maternity leave. She will be back next week for episode number 271, but today we have the final guest of the Reasons I'm Broke string of guest hosts. And this is either we're going to end it really strong. He's aiming to not only be the strongest guest out of this whole string of people that we've had on for the last 5 or 6 episodes. He wants to be the best guest of the show's history. So he's aiming high. He wants it not only to be a strong finish, he wants it to be the strongest finish of any guest. He wants to not even be able to top himself if he comes back. And he will be topping himself because he has been on the show several times before. So let's see how he does it. You've seen him before. You've seen us retweet him on Twitter. You've heard him on the show before. He is on YouTube. He is our biggest YouTube follower and the one that I follow the most as well. And this is welcome to the podcast. Welcome right back to the show, Mr. Alex Purple Swordfish himself. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, Daniel?
I'm doing really well. We've got tons of great news stories, but excited to have you on it because we haven't done the show quite like this in the past. Before it was more casual, but now it's more like, okay, we've got news, we've got stuff to cover, and we're going to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, it's not often you're able to come on and be a guest on your favorite podcast out there. So pleasure to be here and definitely fun to take part in the actual show format for the first time.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for helping Kelli out and myself while she's off on maternity leave and being a part of the guests that did help out for the podcast. Every episode is someone's very first, so obviously this is the first time they'd hear you as well. So go ahead and tell them a little bit about your channel on YouTube, what kind of videos you've been covering, and we will end it with the show as well and what you're going to do. But a little bit about yourself and your very first exposure to the world of superheroes.
So superheroes, it's real simple. As a kid, my mom was real big on getting us to read. Easy way to get kids to read is give them comic books. So if you're a parent out there of a young child, I would encourage you, try to get your kids into comic books. It's a great way to get them reading. And I picked up a lot of vocabulary from comic books as a kid, believe it or not. So I was really big into Spider-Man. I had a subscription to Spider-Man. I would get that monthly. I also had a subscription to Superman. So no real bias on my end. I love Marvel. I love DC. I think they both bring something interesting to the table and something unique from both brands. As far as what I do as a content creator, I'm on YouTube. Easiest way to find me is just go to purpleswordfish.com. It'll take you straight to my YouTube page. From there, you can find my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. And it's mostly a gaming channel. I do reviews, do indie game coverage, do a lot of Madden coverage, and just in general, I just kind of play games that I enjoy, try to share those with the people on YouTube. So again, pleasure is all mine being here, Daniel, and thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Let's go ahead and jump into the news for the week. And Alex, since you are the guest, I'll give you the pleasure of kicking it off with a video game story this week.
Yeah, Injustice 2, they've announced the final DLC pack. So NetherRealm Studios is revealing the fighters for this DLC pack. And I got to say, it's a pretty darn good list. You got the Atom, you have Enchantress, and you also have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So
Holy fuck, man.
Yeah, I mean, what a combo, right? You get the old school comic fans. You get people who maybe watch Suicide Squad.
Suicide.
Yeah, and became Enchantress fans. You know, that was a really great reveal for that character to the mainstream audience. And then who doesn't know TMNT? So that's coming out December 12th. Looks really good. And I got to say, man, NetherRealm has always done a really great job with their DLC. And I think this is just another slam dunk for them in the DLC realm.
One of the things that people pointed out about the video, the reveal of the turtles, is that Leonardo reminds Raphael. By the way, he comes out of the shadows in this alley very much like the very first independent movie, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, the highest grossing independent film at the time. And he comes out in that trench coat, which is, of course, from the comics, but it looks like the movie. It looks like these designs were actually inspired from that live-action film.
And I love that because as a kid, when that movie dropped, I was born in 1985. So if you do the math, I was going to be a TMNT guy. I was the perfect age for when that came about. And when they released that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, jaw-dropping is the only adjective I can really give you as far as the character design in those movies. And to this day, I will say, big credit to Jim Henson and his group who worked on the animatronics for that. It still holds up pretty well today.
Yes.
And that original TMNT movie was really good. It was kind of dark. It was kind of edgy. It was more mature. I know that they took that back a little bit in the sequels, but I got to say, man, I really like that they kind of took some cues from those character designs because those were some really good character designs back in the day.
That's a movie you could always point to when someone says, CGI is doing things that you could never do in the past. And even when they do Turtles again, it's like, it still looks better than what's going on today. It still looks better than any of the Turtles that came afterward, and which was really weird. I think Jim Henson's studio stopped working on the movies after that first one, I believe, might have been the second one. But you can even tell that the quality fell from the puppetry and the costumes with each sequel. And since then, it hasn't really been the same. And I know CGI is doing things that you've never been able to do before, these larger-than-life action sequences. But for me as a viewer, and I know maybe we're in the minority here because generations growing up are getting used to CGI, and that's fine. But for me, it still looks way more realistic to have a person in a costume with a puppet head. That looks like a real fucking turtle to me.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And, to me, I know that I've got the nostalgia blinders on, but that original movie, to me, I just love the aesthetic of it. I think it really nailed the concept, and it was truer to the original comic books. Whereas the new movies, I got to say, I really like them. I know I'm in the minority on that, but the last two TMNT movies, really enjoyed them. I don't think that they're cinema masterpieces. They'll never be inducted into the Library of Congress movie thing or anything like that. But they were fun. They were enjoyable. Just a feel good action movie. But to me, those 90s movies, that'll always be the sweet spot.
No, I'm with you there. Even with the new movies, they're fucking solid. And I remember telling people, they're like, you're crazy. And it's like, well, have you seen it? Actually watch it. And the sequel was better than the first one. They really narrowed everything down and they lined up their ducks and did it really well. But for getting back to this DLC, what I was getting to with Leonardo is he says that that they need to work together as a team. So some people have been speculating as to whether this is just kind of like Super Smash Brothers where you choose different skins for the character, or if the different turtles are going to actually be a part of the gameplay as you fight your opponent.
I mean, I would hope that it's individual characters, but if you got to use all four of them, I mean, that's fine too. I think either one would work. And I think it's just really I think it's great that they're just including them in this game. It was unexpected for me. I did not expect to see TMNT and Injustice 2. So very pleasant surprise.
Just when you thought that NetherRealm couldn't surprise you with their guests, DLC spots, or fighters, because in the past they've had the Predator, they had the Xenomorph, they've had Jason Voorhees in there. I think, Freddy Krueger was another one. And they've pretty much came up with all these characters that you're like, who can't they choose? And when they chose the Turtles, which I think are, I don't know, they're like a lesser surprise than, Predator or Jason Voorhees is more left field. But even the Turtles came out and people were like, holy shit, man. People are still excited to get something completely out of the park and different in their DLC for Injustice and for Mortal Kombat. And this was no exception. People loved it. They ran with it. This is DLC done right. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, DLC is a really tricky territory in games right now. I think in a moment we're going to talk about how you don't do DLC.
Yeah, please lead
Because you
into it.
can, well, yeah, I mean, so this is DLC done right. This is something that gets people really excited. And if you look back, these are the same people who, like you said, Jason Voorhees was an add-on to Mortal Kombat X, and people were losing their minds over it. I mean, people were more than willing to pay for it. Now we go into how to do DLC the wrong way, and alienating your customers with DLC and microtransactions. EA this week, you sent over the show notes, and I said, man, we got to talk about Battlefront 2 because the huge controversy was trending on Twitter, and obviously got a lot of attention on Reddit. But somebody on Reddit this week posted the information that they found out with the final version of Battlefront 2. It's been in an open beta for a while, closed beta before that. A lot of people have been playing it through early access. Final version, Darth Vader, unlockable character. They said, hey, if you want to get this character, you can either pay and get him right away. So you do that through a microtransaction, or you have to pay, or you have to play 40 hours of gameplay to unlock this character. Now, EA's done this in the past. Not to go too far into that, but me personally, I was affected by this with Tiger Woods 2010, I believe, the year that they did the Masters content. So when they did that, when you bought Tiger Woods, you did not get all the golf courses. For you to get all the golf courses, you kind of had to grind. And it took about, same thing here, about 40 hours worth of gameplay for you to unlock all the golf courses in Tiger Woods. Or you could pay a flat fee of $20 and unlock them right away. It alienated people from the Tiger Woods franchise. EA had to really backtrack on this. They lowered the requirement to 15 hours after this thread on Reddit. They did try to double down on Reddit, and this was the most fascinating part to me, is they went on Reddit, they replied to this gentleman who said,
idea.
I paid, yeah, they replied directly to him. He said, I paid $80 for this game. I bought the premium edition, and you're telling me I either have to grind for hours on end or pay more money to get Darth Vader, who I think we all can agree is a very integral part of the Star Wars universe.
Absolutely.
But he posts this, and they double down on it, and they say, we wanted to reward players and give them something to chase after and a sense of accomplishment. And I think we can all agree that grinding endlessly through 15-minute team death matches is not going to be a rewarding experience for anybody. And it's really just trying to push you towards the microtransactions. And EA has come under a lot of fire with this. Like I said, they doubled down on Reddit. You can check it out yourself. And it set a record. It is the most downvoted comment on Reddit of all time. And
Get
at the
out
time,
of here.
Not kidding, Daniel. At the time, I sent the note over to you saying, hey, can you add this to the show notes? This comment had 640,000 downvotes on Reddit. So you want to talk about a public backlash and how to not do DLC right. People are getting really sick of loot boxes and microtransactions. I know loot boxes really had a good PR spin when like Overwatch came out, but it's been about a year and a half now. Everybody's been ripping off these loot boxes, Call of Duty, Star Wars Battlefront, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
People are sick of it. I think the consumer's speaking with their wallet to an extent. I think the outcry online is very, very adamant, very vocal. So I think EA really needs to look at their business model one more time. But I thought, we have to mention it. Here's one company doing the right thing, getting people excited about DLC, presenting content that really means something. And then here's another company that's clearly doing a cash grab.
What I found more fascinating with the NetherRealm's reveal, in the very video itself, you see at the end it says you can get the DLC now, or there's the Ultimate Edition of Injustice 2 releasing, which has all the DLC packs, which you don't see too often either, where they actually advertise the game that has everything in it as opposed to just buying everything a la carte. So I thought that was kind of innovative. I've never seen that, at least on my end, but I'm also not as big in the gaming world as you are. But the one thing that fascinates me even more is that Battlefront 2 was already fighting an uphill battle because people weren't exactly thrilled with the first part. And then they come forward with this oddball Darth Vader holding him hostage behind these hours of gameplay. So it's got to be more the publisher than the developers, and the publisher saying, we have the Star Wars name. How much more money do you think we can make if we withhold Darth Vader and make him an event, make him an extra, make him an unlockable, and make him DLC all at the same time?
Yeah, you're right. It's a walled garden. I mean, that's really the best analogy that I can give you with these games that EA puts out. They do it with I cover a lot of Madden on my channel, and I'm one of those guys who does put a little bit of real world money into the game. I certainly don't spend as much as some of my friends who dump hundreds. And I even have one friend who spent over $1,000 last year on Madden.
Jeez.
Opening packs. And I think that it's time for consumers to kind of try to make a decision, because developers like EA and Activision and some of the other big services out there, developers specifically and publishers, they're talking about games as a service now, as opposed to games as something where you pick it up at a point of sale system, you pay $60 and you go on your way. They're talking about games as a service, and EA is really trying to blur those lines. Mm-hmm. You do buy the Ultimate Pack, and it does come with a lot of DLC included, but then on top of that, there's these loot crates, there's additional DLC that's not part of your season pass, and it's really become tiresome for some consumers. And I got to say, it's really disappointing when you buy a season pass, because this has happened to me before. You buy a season pass for a game, and it could be anywhere from $20 to $30, and then they go, well, here's this really cool DLC, but it's not part of your season pass. So we're going to hit you up for another $9 to $15. And I mean, that can really get disheartening for a consumer. I think they're already pushing it. And this goes for all developers. Ubisoft's famous for this too. They do gold editions of all their big releases, and for example, Watch Dogs 2, right. They had a $60 SKU, they had a $99 SKU. I bought the $99 SKU because I know I'm going to play the crap out of Watch Dogs 2. But it gave me everything. There was no other like big story driven piece that's like, oh well, this is another $10. But a lot of developers are kind of going, hey, here's this Ultimate Edition, and then on top of that, we have even more content, and it's really exhausting for consumers, and it's impossible to keep up with if you're not a hardcore gamer.
And for the record, I think I speak for both of us when I say that we are overall in favor of DLC. It seems to be the way that some of these developers are getting around, or the industry itself is getting around raising that price mark from over $60, because I think over that is when consumers really start to drop off. So they found that magical number, and DLC is a way for the developers to make extra money, because obviously these games are costing more to develop. They're spending more money on marketing. But, you see the market kind of self-correcting itself when people downvote these things from EA, or these practices from these companies that just aren't learning after every event and after every time they do this.
Yeah, you say it all the time, speak with your wallet. And I think that's what we as consumers have to do. We have to speak with our wallet and say, if we're not, if this isn't something that's palatable to us, we're not going to support it financially. And then, maybe it stops. The other thing that I would tell you is I cover a lot of indie games on my channel. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are starting to give indie games a look that haven't before, because with those, you pay one price, you get the game. And a lot of times, if there's add-ons later on, they're free.
Yeah, that's going to be the model, I think. And obviously, indie developers are more than happy to be like, hey, come check us out. We'll be fine. You'll have fun with us. Yeah. So one story, this is something that we've seen video game movies in the past, but I think there's going to be a big change after this particular one comes out, because so far, yeah, we've had big hits like Resident Evil. That franchise has done extremely well. Assassin's Creed recently didn't do too hot, but then Mortal Kombat did great. But this might set a new standard for not only video game movies, but also the quality and storytelling of them. We'll find out. But Illuminati Entertainment is actually next up, and they're developing an animated adaptation, an animated reboot to Super Mario Brothers. And this story comes straight out of the Wall Street Journal, who have revealed that this deal in particular took much longer to nail down because Nintendo needed to, quote, feel confident it will be involved enough in the creative process, end quote.
Yeah, I think this is a good move for them. Shigeru Miyamoto and Chris Melandandri, I'm probably mispronouncing that, will be producers for the film. No release date has been given, but the world of Mario last made a cameo appearance in Disney's Wreck-It Ralph, which was wildly successful. But I think this is the right move for them, specifically with creative control. And the reason I say that is, interestingly enough, before I even got the show notes, about a week ago, I watched this really good, I guess you could kind of call it a like research video or of some kind, where the guy talked about the Super Mario Brothers movie from the 90s. Do you remember that one, Daniel?
I do. I remember loving it as a kid.
Yeah, I actually watched as a kid and I really liked it because, I mean, I was the right age. I watched it. I'm like, oh, it's kind of Mario. It's kind of sort of Mario. I love this. And it has Dennis Hopper. And I don't know why, but I always thought Dennis Hopper was really good. But yeah, like with that movie, this guy, he did this tremendous amount of research. And he got these quotes specifically from Shigeru Miyamoto, where he was saying one of the things that they felt could have been done better with that movie is had they had more creative control to kind of guide the process, specifically with the aesthetic of the movie and, kind of how they made it look like a real world movie, but it's still the Mario universe. So they felt like that kind of got away from them, like it kind of slipped out of their hands, and they thought it was a missed opportunity. So with this particular situation, it seems like this is going to be kind of like the Nintendo theme park that they're putting in Universal, where part of that deal was they wanted absolute 100% creative control over what it's going to look like, the final product, and so on. So they're more protective of their IPs nowadays.
Definitely.
They've always been protective, but it seems like now they're more so. So I'm excited about this. I don't know about you.
I really am. I really can't wait to see this because I think Nintendo does have that untapped set of characters that they can really go into and really make a profit on in Hollywood with all of the franchises. They've already got a fan base established. The Pokemon movies in Japan make a killing. I think some of them are still in theaters, and we just had I Choose You do a limited run here, which I believe they expanded due to the popularity and demand. But that's just one franchise. You've got Mario that's coming up, Zelda, Metroid, all of these other franchises that they can really make a lot of money off of if done right. But, they're obviously more cautious over it, as you mentioned, because of what's happened in the past. And I think if this ends up doing as well as they hope it does, they will then open it up to, okay, maybe let's do a Zelda. Maybe let's do another video game tie-in movie. A couple of things I saw on Twitter, someone said that the end credits scene should be another franchise kind of tying in or leaking into the Mario universe so that it eventually leads up into a Super Smash Brothers movie. You'll give Metroid the standalone movie, but it connects to Super Mario in some way. Like you have Master Hand manipulating the universes or something like that, which would be amazing. I don't think Nintendo's going to go for it because I think they want to see how this movie does first, but that's just fans speculating wildly. But the other thing I'm curious about is if this is going to be an adaptation of an already existing video game, like let's say, for example, a Super Mario Galaxy film, or if this is going to be an all original new story made specifically for cinema.
I hope it's an original story. I think that would be the way to go. I think that people would enjoy that more. They don't really want to hear, a story that they've already gone through. And generally speaking, if you're going to watch a Mario Brothers movie, you've probably played all the games. So I would hope that they go with an original story. And I hope that this does lead on to other franchises in the Nintendo universe, maybe getting a look at a movie, because you mentioned Metroid, and I think that could be a really good power play. I would definitely watch a Metroid movie if it was done right. And I think it has the potential to be something really cool. So definitely good news. And it's kind of nice to see Nintendo doing something that I don't know that they would have been, willing to even hear this out 10 years ago. So I think now with them trying to really gain some traction in the market with the Nintendo Switch, they've kind of loosened up the reins a little bit, started kind of thinking outside the box a little bit more. And this is really encouraging. I really hope it sees the light of day and that it's really good.
I cannot move away from the world of Nintendo on the big screen without mentioning, and I know it won't happen, it won't even be the fourth movie they go for, but I want to see a Star Fox galactic space battles up on the big screen, a Star Fox film. And with the way that Star Fox Zero was received, and I don't think it sold as well as they had hoped, I don't think that will happen. I don't even know if, I'm still hoping for a Star Fox game in general. I don't even know if we'll get that. But I would love to see space battles and kind of like that anime they did to promote Star Fox Zero, but take the same exact animation style and throw it up on the big screen or even a TV show. But that's just my bias of my favorite franchise from Nintendo.
Again, I think it would work. I think there's a lot of potential there. The characters are good in Star Fox, and there's a lot of depth to them. I think you could easily make a movie, even if it's just direct to video. I think you could still make money on it, and I would certainly be somebody that would watch that.
Something else heading to our big screen in the near future is actually coming from Sony Pictures and the world of Spider-Man.
Yeah, Sony Pictures is developing a live-action Morbius the Living Vampire film, and it's going to take place in Sony's Spider Universe, and it's going to include Venom, Black Cat, and Silver Sable.
Or at least the universes for sure. So I'm sure those characters will actually show up in this if they want to tie in all these movies. First appearance of Morbius to our collectors out there was an Amazing Spider-Man number 101. So if you are looking to, if you're like, oh, I've always wanted to own the first appearance. Oh shit, the movie's coming out. Now it's going to be even harder to find. That's the issue right there. Number 101 in Amazing Spider-Man. No release date yet on Morbius the Living Vampire. Do you think people will care? Do you think Venom is going to be the key in making people care about the rest of these Sony developed movies?
I don't know, Daniel. I looked at this and I thought this looks like something that could get caught in development hell. Like this could be something that struggles to get budget, struggles to actually get greenlit, struggles to actually get into filming. As far as Venom goes, I'm totally with you. I know me and you agree on this 100%. Venom looks really cool. I know a lot of people really like the character. Not a whole lot of depth there. I'm still struggling to figure out how Venom's going to have a solo movie. I still don't get how that's going to work. So I don't really think Venom adds much to this one. I think it would be cool. I would like to see it. I would definitely watch it. But this just seems like something that gets announced and never made. I hate to be that negative guy on this.
And I don't blame Sony either. They only have so many properties in the Spider-Man universe to work with, so they're taking what they do own and trying to make money off of it while they can, because the comic book world right now, it seems like, 15 years ago, you would have said Guardians of the Galaxy is going to make millions at the box office. People would have laughed at you because no one knew who Groot was, at least to the general public. They were C-list characters at that time, much like Iron Man before that first Iron Man movie. As much as people like to point to Civil War, it's like, well, the fans weren't really at the level that they are now. Like Iron Man is an A-list character. You see him on t-shirts and lunchboxes and everything, but not back then. So I get it. I understand why Sony is doing this. But I'm with you that if Venom ends up being the hit, then these movies, I think, have a way better chance at being made, especially if they do put in Venom in these other movies. The big question is still, do they tie into Spider-Man Homecoming? And the producer on Sony's side has said, yes, it does. And then Kevin Feige has said, no, it doesn't, but it sort of does, but no, it doesn't. So people are still waiting. And I think contracts are still being signed as to, will this be a part of the MCU, and how much control or how much say does Disney have over what Sony does with their properties?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, especially with the, we're going to talk about it later, but the impending possible, maybe might sort of happen merger.
That's right, the merger, according to CNBC, between Disney and 20th Century Fox. We talked about it last week, but according to them, the talks are actually not finished between the two big companies.
Yeah, the quote here from CNBC's Jason Faber reads, quote, "It does not appear at the very least that Disney and 21st Century Fox have not abandoned the idea of that combination," end quote. And this contradicts Bloomberg's report last week saying talks were finished.
I think it's all about Disney, adding more zeros to the check, how much they want to pay 20th Century Fox for all of these for themselves, really. So, I don't know, like if there's already talks and, Ragnarok made this much money, they've got Infinity War coming out. There's no way Disney's not right now pressuring 20th Century Fox like, look, We want the Fantastic Four. We want all of you, but we really want to use the X-Men. We want to use the Fantastic Four. We want to use Deadpool. Even if they're a rebooted version of all of these characters, we want to put them in Infinity War. And it's not too late to do some extra shoots and throw them in there. Just like Spider-Man in Civil War. Like, that movie was already filmed, and you can tell when you watch it, like, oh yeah, Spider-Man was tacked on later on. So this, before Infinity War comes out, is when Disney wants to get this finished.
Yeah, with this, my personal take on it is it's kind of a selfish one. Is I would like to see it happen because there's a lot of properties, specifically Fantastic Four, that I would really like to see Disney get their hands on, get it in front of the right people, and do the series right. That last Fantastic Four movie, I wanted to like it so bad, Daniel. I wanted it to be so good, and it just wasn't. It really just disappointed me. And I remember halfway through the movie, I like came to that realization. I'm like, it's not gonna turn around. It's just not gonna be good. And it was really disappointing to me. So, from a selfish standpoint, as a fan of the Marvel Comics universe, I think it would be good for the content. But at the same time, I kind of wonder, like, do these two massive entertainment companies need to be any bigger than they already are? Like, aren't we approaching monopoly territory now?
Yeah, a lot of people have been bringing that up, that this is overall not a good thing for Hollywood.
It's a little scary because when somebody owns all the chess pieces, it's so much harder for you to get on the playing board, if that makes sense. And I think it's scary in any industry, not just entertainment, when somebody has that much power. But short term, like I said, it could be very valuable to the Marvel comic movies going forward.
Absolutely. And this isn't it for Disney. Like, if you don't like the comics, they've got your money in other ways. And this is through an exclusive franchise of a massive fucking, it's coming out in December. It's goddamn Star Wars. According to Disney chairman Bob Iger, there's going to be a live action Star Wars TV show exclusively for Disney's app, debuting in 2019.
Yeah, that is really interesting to me. It looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, you have to use the app to
Correct.
watch the show.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, talk about, when I worked for Disney, they always talked about this concept of synergy. Boy, isn't this some synergy right here? If you're going to watch our show, you got to download our app.
My manager is a massive Star Wars fan, and he hates the a la carte market that it's turning into right now with, well, if you want to watch this show, like right now, Warner Brothers and Disney have both, they're not going to renew their contracts with Netflix or Hulu for their TV shows and movies. Instead, they're saying, why are we paying Netflix? Or why are we getting paid by Netflix when we can get more money by having our own app and having these properties, these shows that people love and want to watch on our very own service? So if you want to watch Batman the Animated Series and the whole Bruce Timm universe, get the Warner Brothers app. If you want to watch Star Wars and the whole MCU and then the Marvel TV shows moving forward, and an original Star Wars fucking television show, get the Disney service and download the Disney app. This is exactly why Netflix has been, and they were smart. I give them tons of credit because they saw this years in advance, and they started making original content on their platform so that people like me who love House of Cards, although that's ending soon, so I don't know about that, but they're going, okay, you want to watch House of Cards, right? Like, yeah, there's these other shows, but you got to keep your Netflix service if you want to watch this original content. And for the price you're paying a month, and for all the content that they are producing, the Magic fucking School Bus is another one, which is really solid. I don't know if you've seen that, but all of these Netflix productions are well worth the money. But again, my manager's saying, I hate these a la carte services, but I'm going to be paying Disney to watch Star Wars.
I get where your manager's coming from. If myself in my house, we have a Netflix subscription. We also have a Hulu subscription. And, when you really start looking at it, it does add up pretty quickly. And, we also have DirecTV. So we pay a monthly cable bill as well. And it can get a little bit, it's just kind of like the microtransactions that we were talking about earlier. It can really wear customers out, and people will get a little bit exhausted from it. But what I will say is, from a business perspective, I know Disney faced a lot of backlash. I mean, I remember when they announced that all those movies were coming off of Netflix, Twitter lost their collective minds.
Fuck, I missed it.
Yeah, people were losing it. How dare you take Frozen away from little Billy? He loves watching it on Netflix every day. But, you know, I get why they did it long term. I think short term, the move to Netflix was a really good move for them. They had a deal in place with Netflix, if I'm not mistaken, where they got a very, very handsome payout.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, long term, I think they're looking at this Disney app, its standalone service. I know that the big three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, they're all doing that themselves. And even some cable networks are starting to look at standalone streaming options as well. And what I would tell people like your managers, this is what consumers asked for years, for decades. Because how many times have you heard some guy in line buying a 12-pack at the gas station lamenting that he can't, buy channels a la carte with his cable provider? Well, I only watch ESPN and this channel, so why can't I just pay $10 a month and watch these two channels? Well, here's your a la carte options, consumers of the world. The downside is it's going to cost you. I mean, either way, this content is not cheap to produce, so you're going to have to pay for it one way or the other, whether that's through a cable provider or an a la carte streaming service.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it. Like you're absolutely correct in that people wanted the a la carte. Now, they got used to Netflix, I guess, where everything was there, but then now it's going to what they wanted, which is still probably cheaper than the cable bill that they were paying when they were complaining initially. But I think people forget that they've asked for this kind of thing in the past. And now that they got used to Netflix, in which it had everything, they've kind of forgotten the time of cable where, you paid over $100 for all these channels and you only watch 3 of them. It's like, well, you're going to be paying well under that. With even if you had a subscription to WB, Disney, Netflix, and Hulu, that's still well under $100 regardless, and that's a shit ton of content.
Yeah, it's so funny. I work in my workplace. We sell paid TV service, and we always kind of joke in the circles about DirecTV, cable providers, Dish Network, you name it, right? It's basically 300 channels of shit you never watch, So it's really nice to tell somebody, hey, you get 340 channels, but really, like you said, I mean, generally speaking, you probably watch about half a dozen of them on a regular basis, and then everything else is just noise. So I think that that's kind of the direction it's moving in. And then also, I don't know if you remember Netflix the way I do, but it just seems to me didn't Netflix feel like it came out 5 years earlier than all these other services? Everything else was in infancy. They were maybe planning it, and then here was Netflix way ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm. That Netflix was the first one in the game, and then Hulu was around before them, but they didn't really have this kind of service. And I think they followed in Netflix's footsteps and did something different, but also similar to what Netflix started with.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, back to our original point here. I hate to go off on a tangent, so sorry about that. But I'm looking forward to this. I think it could be really cool. I think any kind of original Star Wars content, especially live action content, could be really fun for the fan base to sink their teeth into. So I'm looking forward to it.
Switching on over to the DC content, we've got several stories actually from Warner Brothers' DCEU universe. And it starts off with Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman 2 has been pushed up 6 weeks from December 13th, 2019 to November 1st, 2019.
And this is, of course, to stay away from what we were just talking about, Star Wars Episode 9, which has a release date of December 20th. So that would have put it just a week away from Episode 9. I mean, talk about profits lost completely or not really maximizing your potential at the box office.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You worry about 2 franchises this powerful. No doubt Wonder Woman, the first one that came out, I think this year, right? 2017.
Yep.
It came out this year, runaway success, really exceeded expectations critically and in the box office.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very good franchise that you want to protect. You do not want it to have, another great franchise that I'm sure Disney's trying to protect in Star Wars. You do not want them cannibalizing each other's business. And I would say if you're Disney, you probably like this move too, because you'd be worried that Wonder Woman might eat into Star Wars as well, right?
Oh, inevitably it would. Like, I don't know how big, obviously the Warner Brothers would suffer more because Star Wars is greater than the whole DCEU, I would say. And, but yeah, that would still be profits lost no matter what. Like, both companies lose.
Yeah, so I think, this is just a no-brainer. And here's the good news. We get Wonder Woman 2 6 weeks earlier.
Absolutely. Can't complain about that. And I'm still shocked that Ragnarok came out 2 weeks, this close to Justice League even. Like, I know this is the market. This is the time when movies really start ramping up for the holiday season, but I would have still thrown Ragnarok maybe 3 or 4 weeks away from Justice League, because 2 weeks later, we're about to have Justice League. At the time of this episode's release on iTunes and everywhere else, Justice League will have come out. And how many people have forgotten? How many people? I did it myself. I'm like, yeah, I would have eventually seen Ragnarok maybe. I didn't like the first two, but Jeff Goldblum's in this shit. And he even said it on the episode. I'm like, I'm going to watch it. But now with Justice League here, like, my interest has completely shifted already. And then there's going to be the next thing, which is then Star Wars. So I think it's an example of, Ragnarok would have made a little bit more. And I know there's a huge drop off from week 1 to week 2 on every single movie that releases, but you want to try to make as much of that money as you can.
No, I agree. I thought it was a really interesting strategy by both Marvel and DC to schedule those two movies so close to one another. The only thing I can think is it got people talking a lot. Not to go too far off on a tangent here, but the amount of people I saw on Twitter all really over the last 2 weeks talking about, I'm seeing Thor and I'm not seeing Justice League because Thor is better, and then I'm seeing Justice League and not Thor because DC's better. Like, it got people talking on Twitter, so maybe it created some buzz. I don't know. Some guy in marketing could probably explain it a lot better than I could.
Probably. This came as a shock to me, and that's the debut of Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam, which is actually going to be making his first appearance so far. Things could change, of course, but his first appearance in the DCEU through Suicide Squad 2, and this comes from The Wrap.
Yeah, the team in Suicide Squad 2 is going to be sent to track down a, quote, weapon of mass destruction, end quote, and that's going to be Black Adam. Production is set to start October 2018, but no release date has been given for the film. And I got to say, The Rock just gets in everything nowadays, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He's just all like, and what a credit to him. Yes. He went from pro wrestling to Hollywood. His first big movie as a star was The Rundown. Very underrated film, in my opinion. Just a really great action film. If you haven't watched it already, you owe it to yourself to watch it at least once. Definitely still to this day, my favorite film that The Rock has been in overall. Just really funny, really good action scenes, really cool movie. But man, he's in everything now. And I know him and Tyrese got at that big argument about him kind of taking over Fast and the Furious and making it all about himself. So
he can't help it. He's not writing these things.
Well, look at him. He's like, he looks like Adonis, and he's got charisma for days. He's got the prototypical male look. Mm-hmm. He's funny and he can act. He's come charming. A long way as an actor. He's very charming. So, I can see why, Fast and Furious, after Paul Walker unfortunately passed away, it basically became the Vin Diesel and Rock show. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people made a lot of money off of that. So, as long as it's done in conjunction, I don't want him to take over the Suicide Squad franchise quite yet, but I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be really cool. And Suicide Squad, the first one, it won a Oscar. It
did. That's true.
Won an Academy Award.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. So it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a great job casting. Will Smith really exceeded my expectations.
He killed it.
Yeah, I had high expectations already because Will Smith is amazing. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't even really care for Will Smith that much. or his movies, but I will say this: he's very, very good at what he does. And he's made a lot of good movies over the years. He's just like The Rock in a way.
Yes.
He's come so far as an actor from the days of Fresh Prince of and Bel Air to now. I mean, you could tell me it's two totally different guys, and I believe you,
right?
Because he's just come that far. So, I mean, they're just adding more star power to this runaway hit of a franchise. I think it's got money written all over it, man.
No, you're right. Anything that they put The Rock in at this point, like he's already got his fan base. He's got these people that are going to go see whatever he is in. And the fact that they put him as the villain, he says he's like, I got to choose between Black Adam and Shazam, and I chose Black Adam, which is what people wanted anyway. They're like, he looks exactly like Black Adam. They should just have him be Black Adam. And when he chose Black Adam, people were like, Black Adam, what was he doing? And it's like, again, this is what you wanted.
It fits him much better.
He would have been fine either way. Like, he would have been a great Shazam. He's going to be a great Black Adam, hopefully. And the fact that he's going to be in Suicide Squad 2 is that much more guaranteed box office returns in that movie. You've got Will Smith, you've got Margot Robbie, you've got, and I'm sure the Gotham City Sirens are going to make some kind of cameo in it. Batman will probably show up again, and now Black Adam, which tells me maybe we'll even get Shazam in there. We'll get little Billy running around in that movie. I don't know. That could be the way they introduce Shazam too, but even having this villain, if he joins the Suicide Squad eventually, I don't know, or if he's going to be the villain. But people forget. People like to point at Suicide Squad and say that is the worst one in the DCEU. They should never make one again. It's like, do you realize how much money that fucking movie made? Did you forget already? It's been less than 2 years. That movie was a fucking hit, and they're going to keep making them.
Yeah, it got some rough response critically. And, I understand the critical response to it. With that being said, most of the critical response that was negative talked about, well, they didn't do a good enough job telling everybody's background story. Well, I'd like to see them make a movie that's an hour and a half and tell the background story of 6 characters. Yeah. It's really hard to do. And that's on DC, like they really bit off more than they could chew, but they still made a really good movie out of it. They overcame the drama that came from, I forget all the specifics behind it, but there was the original cut of the movie. And then there was this scandal about, at the last minute, the movie studio, they did this alternate cut, and that's what hit theaters. And I got to be honest with you. I watched both cuts and I didn't really see that big of a difference. I do remember a couple scenes that stuck out, but nothing that really changed my perception on the film overall. But what I will say is, with Suicide Squad, critical reception aside, like you said, made a lot of money, very lucrative financially. And then in addition to that, fans of the DC universe were very receptive to it. I didn't know a single person that loves DC that didn't love that movie. So
very true. Yeah.
I think they did a lot more right. Like I said, they won a Oscar and they won an Academy Award. They made a lot of money. Take it as a win.
Yeah, the one thing I am going to correct you on is that the original cut to Suicide never actually released. The extended cut were just some of the deleted scenes that didn't make it in the final cut. What ended up happening is, from what I understand, the soundtrack was way different in the original version. And what they did is the response was so great to the second trailer, or rather the full trailer to Suicide Squad, than the teaser. And they hired that same company that made that trailer to rework and re-edit the full film. So they had both movies, and they said, okay, this is the original cut. This is what we were going to do, different tone. And this is the one with like the different, pop music in it, and some scenes were rearranged, less scenes with the Joker. So probably some of the more darker scenes were cut out based on people's response to BVS. And then they actually screened both versions to test audiences, and test audiences responded better to the one that we all saw in cinema. And that's the one that is on every Blu-ray and DVD out there. So we never saw David Ayer's original cut to it. At, movie studios never show us that stuff. It unfortunately never comes out. Some exceptions like The Exorcist, the beginning, but normally you never see it. But, audiences tested better to this other version, and the studio made the call. And even David Ayer said, it's still my movie, even though they edited it in a different way and changed some of the tone overall. It's still the movie. I'm still going to call it my own, and I'm happy with what they released. So that's the one change that probably worked out for the better. people like to point to the studio and say they don't know, like, but no, there's a lot of data that goes into this.
Yeah, I think they have some people. And first off, thank you for educating me on that, because I was a little bit off base there. And I didn't know that. So I learned something today on the podcast. Look at that. The more you know. So do the little sound effect for the more you know.
Anyway. Yeah, it's going in now.
Yeah. So yeah, all joking aside, did learn something there. And like you said, they do a lot of research. And I would assume if you're DC, you probably have some people that you pay a lot of money to make decisions like that. And they're not going to make that decision without all the data that they need. So, I mean, overall, I just think that was a lot. I think that was much ado about nothing. But that's just Alex's take on the DC universe.
And continuing with the DCEU, there was an interview with MTV, and some of the stars from Justice League, the now released Justice League, unless you're on Patreon, maybe not yet, were asked who they'd like to see make their DCEU debut in the future.
Yeah, so I thought this was really interesting. Ben Affleck said Black Canary. He says he'd like to see more female presence in the universe. Henry Cavill replied with Supergirl for the same reason. Said that it would be, quote, nice to have a bit of family for Superman, end quote. And Ray Fisher said Zatanna, and Ezra Miller replied with a female Green Lantern. So who would you pick, Daniel?
To make their DCEU debut, I mean, I'm going to go with Sinestro. Like, I want to see the Sinestro Corps War, and I've been saying it forever. Now that I have Shazam, because Kelli and I have said it multiple times in the past, like, we want a Shazam live-action film. Where is the Shazam movie? And now they're doing it, so we're like, okay, what's the next one on the list? Like, we're already happy, but it's like, if you're going to ask, the Sinestro Corps movie, the Sinestro Corps War. So even if you bring back Mark Strong, who did a great job in the live-action Green Lantern film, either way, I want to see Sinestro's arc on the big screen, because that is one of the greatest villains, not just in the DC universe, but in comics.
Yeah, that is. I went over a list of all DC characters this afternoon, and I was just trying to pick out the ones that I would go with. Sinestro was not on my list, but now that you say his name, I go, man, that would be cool, because Sinestro was the one good part of that Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie way back when. Yeah. He was like the only really good part of that movie for me. I really like the Green Lantern universe, and I really wanted to like that movie, but it didn't work for me. But Sinestro was really cool in that, so I would love to see him in the current universe. For me, I know it'll never happen, but I'd love to see Damian Wayne brought in.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
That would be really cool. I think they could do so much cool stuff with that character. I know he's kind of a new character, and he's kind of fresh on people's minds, but I think I would compare Damian Wayne to Miles Morales, where it's a new, fresh character, but if they were put it in the movies, people would lose their minds. And then I would also say I would love to see Ra's al Ghul. I think, somehow work him in somewhere, please. I want some Ra's al Ghul.
Well, if you're having Damian Wayne, you've got to do Ra's al Ghul. You got to do Talia again. Like, yeah, we just had him in the Nolanverse, but this is the closest we've ever been to comics right now, is in the DCEU and in the MCU. So it's interesting that you say Damian, because we've never been closer to Damian Wayne in the DCEU than right now, because based on that one scene in Batman v Superman where he's in the Batcave and you walk past Jason Todd's outfit, like, okay, so we know there's a history with the Robins here. Jason Todd is dead. We're going to see Red Hood in one of these movies. It's inevitable. And then Nightwing's going to have his own spin-off movie. So there's already 2 Robins in the works, which puts it in the right timeline for Damian Wayne. Even if these fucking rumors are true about Ben Affleck wanting out of the DCEU, and it ends up being a transition of maybe Batman Rest in Peace, in which Batman was quote-unquote killed, but, ended up traveling through time, and that's when Dick Grayson took over the mantle of Batman. So they could do it that way, and that's when Damian Wayne, who was Robin at the time, was like, I don't respect you. You are not my father. You are not Batman. And it was just like months upon months of Damian giving Robin, fucking Dick Grayson, shit all the time, because, he was like, that's not how father would do it. That's not right. I would be a better Batman than you. Like, pointing up at fucking Dick Grayson, little 10-year-old Damian telling, fucking 30-plus-year-old Dick Grayson, like, I would be a better Batman right now than you are.
Yeah, I love that about Damian Wayne. He's just so indignant and stubborn and in a weird way that does make him more like Batman
Yes.
because Batman is very similar to that. Batman sees it his way and that's just kind of the way it's going to be. So I
Because
think
it's the right way, sir.
well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, Justice League should have been called Batman and Pals. I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
really
Absolutely.
what that movie is. And, I'm a real big Superman fan, but I got to say what they've done with Batman in the movies has really revitalized the character, brought him to even higher heights than it was already at. I mean, Batman's already been an iconic character for decades, but man, what they've done in the DCEU, has taken that character to new heights. And, if we can't get Damian Wayne, I guess what I would say as a final recommendation is I'll just settle for Chris O'Donnell as Robin. I mean, if we could just bring that back.
Wouldn't that be nuts if he was Jason Todd?
I feel like that could work.
So do I. Like, I think he could pull off a Jason Todd.
Not even just like being cute. Like, I feel like if somebody wrote that the right way, that could really work.
Oh man. So you heard it here first. So if someone comes out with an article, like, no, point out to the reasons I'm broke and Al right here. So link them to the episode.
Well, if they really do it, I want a writer's credit. Like, I better be in the credits. Like,
not even payment, just a credit.
Yeah, I just want a credit. I just want the holiday because you know what? I was recently listening to an interview with a guy who was a writer in Hollywood, and he was saying, when you're starting off in your career, the pay is great, but he said a lot of guys don't even really care about the pay; they care about the credit. So some of these low-level Hollywood writers, they practically beg to get into the credits because that's what helps them get their next job, which I thought was fascinating to me, in a weird way, like that it's not really about the compensation. It's about furthering their career, which is sad in a way because I feel bad for writers having to do that, but it's also kind of cool. It's like this weird meritocracy of sorts.
Yeah. You got to build your tail, right? You got to have you can't just be like, okay, sell it off, here you go. Because you're making more up front initially, but it's kind of like that, Disney deal you were just talking about. And you want to have your tail behind you to be like, my name is on this movie and on this movie and on this one. Ask my agent, ask their agent, ask the studio. Look me up on IMDb. You will find that list of movies and credits that I've been on. So if you want me on this project, which is probably a bigger project than they've ever done, but you got to play it smug, right? And that's how they get the next big job, the next big gig.
I mean, that's what they look at apparently in Hollywood. I didn't think it was like that. I thought there was a little bit more personal inter-networking, if you will.
I thought you were going to go in a dark place with that.
Well, it depends on what kind of personal networking you're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about, you got a little drunk and somebody fell asleep and, you're on a mattress and then before you know it, House of Cards is canceled 30 years later.
Man.
But too soon? Sorry.
No, never too soon, but it's not at the expense of poor Kevin Spacey. Poor Kevin Spacey. Like,
yeah. So
I want more House of Cards. That's why I'm defending him.
People really do look at credits more than I thought in Hollywood. So I found out that Bill Murray only did the Garfield movies because he misread the guy that was directing it. He misread his name and he thought it was somebody else. So he looked up that guy's name, but it was the misspelled version. And it was like this guy who had a really great resume. So apparently Bill Murray shows up and he's like, well, where's this guy that I was supposed to be? And he's like, no, it's not that guy. It's this other guy. And at that point, Bill Murray was like, well, I guess I'm Garfield now.
What's really funny about that, I forgot who first pointed it out to me. I think it was someone at work when we were watching the Ghostbusters cartoon. But in that one, the guy that voices Garfield in the Garfield cartoon plays Bill Murray's character. And then in some weird way, many years later, Bill Murray is playing Garfield in the live action film.
Yeah, that was brought up. People started really throwing that fact around because that was something that was in Rick and Morty.
Oh, so that makes more sense now. I see. I don't watch Morty and Rick, so.
Yeah, so okay. I knew that was coming, but yeah, it was Lorenzo Music. So yeah, he was They basically flipped on Garfield and Ghostbusters. Also, that Ghostbusters cartoon, if you haven't already, go check it out. It's really good.
It's on Netflix.
It's really good. It's held up well over the years, better than I expected.
And it's scary. Like one of my coworkers was like, I don't really like this episode. It used to scare me as a kid. so I used to play it all the time.
Bro, I still have stuff like that. I still have just
like what?
There's certain episodes of the Twilight Zone, like the really old version, from I think it was like 50s or 60s. There's like that one episode where the lady wakes up and they're all pig people. That one still freaks me out.
I've never seen it. Do people eat them? Like what happens? Like what's the?
No. So I forget all the specifics around it, but there's this lady and she goes in for plastic surgery, and she goes in and she's like, this is finally the surgery that's going to make me beautiful. And the whole time while they're doing the surgery, all the doctors, plastic surgeons, they have the medical mask over their face. So they do the plastic surgery. They take the bandages off her weeks later, and it's this beautiful woman. I mean, just like stunning lady.
Mm-hmm.
And they all kind of like grimace and they go, oh, it didn't work. And it's like this weird twist. And you're like, wait, what do you mean? She's gorgeous. So they take the medical masks off for the first time, and the people are like half human, half pig. And I know it's stupid. If you look it up on Google, I'm sure it'll come up in an image search. I know it's stupid, but it freaked me out as a kid, man. I'm like, who are these pigmen? I don't know who these pigmen are. I don't like the idea of half swine, half man. It's too bizarre to me. I don't like it.
That's definitely a psychological thing. That's one of the big reasons why a lot of kids are scared of clowns, is because anytime there's an exaggerated feature on a human face, which they're already used to, like, okay, this is what faces look like. And whenever there's a change to it, that freaks, kids and babies out. So no, I totally get where you're coming from. Like now that I know, I'm like, okay, I can see why it was scary for you as a kid.
Also, original Exorcist movie.
Yes. Still with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So like as a kid, it horrified me. The idea of demonic possession really scared me. And there's reasons for that I won't go into.
How old were you when you first saw The Exorcist?
Oh, geez, Daniel, maybe 10 or 11, 12.
Damn,
so
man.
I was a preteen, and I just kind of caught a little bit of it before my parents shut it off. But it really scared me. Very iconic movie. But to this day, there's still scenes where I watch The Exorcist, which I love the movie now.
Yes, it's excellent.
But there's still scenes where I watch it and I get the goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't freak me out, but I just get those goosebumps. I'm like, oh, it's just so good. It's just that good. But yeah, and then there's Exorcist 2 if you want to really put yourself.
3 was great. I like 3.
Yeah. Oh, Exorcist 2.
Oh boy.
What happened?
No, that is my favorite horror film of all time is definitely The Exorcist, and it's a great movie, not just a horror film, but it is awesome. And that's another example, yet again, of practical effects working out and being more frightening than any CGI that you can do. Like, I think what I give the most credit to Exorcist for, and I don't know if there are as many movies in mainstream Hollywood that do this on the horror side, but there was like one jump scare in that when the phone rings. The rest of the time, anytime it's the little girl, like it's just like pure terror. Like all the special effects that they did with her, the makeup, all of it is amazing and all of it is scary, and it's without any jump scares. Like she's just laying in the bed and the camera just cuts to her and it's no music. It's just, here it is, guys. Be frightened. And it still gets me every time. And I'm 100% with you. And I love that. I saw it for the first time when I was 13. And this is when they re-released it in theaters, like the definitive edition or whatever, with the Pazuzu's face was popping up everywhere. And it's like, oh, that's kind of goofy. But in some portions it worked, when they overlaid it over her face, like that was really frightening. But that was the first time I ever saw it. And I didn't, like, it was scary to me. I sat through the whole thing, and that's only because I didn't want to be that 13-year-old that's like, this is too scary, I'm gonna walk out during it. Like, I sat through the whole fucking thing, and I was scared, man. And it's a fucking good movie.
Yeah, man. It's a classic. It's a classic. And then there's, there's certain movies that I watched as a kid and they were really scary, and now I sit there and I say, well, what the heck was wrong with me? So, for example, I saw Ernest Scared Stupid in theaters, and I almost peed myself. I'm not going to lie. I was a really young kid and I watched it and it just freaked me the hell out, bro. To the point where my parents actually took me out of the movie theater. So
Wow.
yeah, it was really bad. But now, I love Ernest movies. I know they're terrible, but I love them anyway.
So the final bit of news before we jump into our Patreon shoutouts and our very first Speak Pike voicemail that we got, and then we'll end it with Al's future with the YouTube channel and what he's got coming up. But according to Fandango, Justice League advanced ticket sales have just topped Wonder Woman's, which is, of course, a great sign of the opening weekend.
Yeah, Wonder Woman took in a little bit over 103 million domestically on its opening weekend. And I think Justice League, I know for a while there, people were talking about Wonder Woman might eclipse Justice League. I just didn't see that happening because Wonder Woman is part of Justice League. So I figured it would just be momentum. Wonder Woman comes out, and then here comes Justice League as the power play, going to make even more money. So very encouraging sign for Justice League. Don't believe the hype on Twitter from the trolls. Even if you hate the DC universe, I think there's no way in the world this movie flops financially.
Nope. No, and that's something this movie could be 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes of the movie, and then a black screen for an hour and a half. And the fact that it's called Justice League, it would never flop. And this is what I said about Batman v Superman. The fact that you have the name of the two biggest, probably the, I've got to say, like the top three names in comics. I would probably go with Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. Like, you've got two of those fucking names on the title of the movie. It can be shit. It can be directed by Tommy Wiseau. That movie's gonna make its money back. And it's the same case with Justice League. It's impossible to flop. It will not flop.
Yeah, I just don't. First off, I don't think it's flopping. And, what you said about it could be, an hour and 15 minutes of just a black screen. That's probably not too far from the truth. After a while, you build up credibility and you just get over with a fan base. And I got to say, I know there's a lot of perception out there that the DC universe has not been as successful in the movie theaters. And I just don't see it. I think that with their fan base, they're unbelievably over right now. And they buy into it. They go out. They see it in theaters. Financially, everything they've released has been a success.
Yes.
And if you want an example of a superhero movie that's a financial flop, like go back and look at The Spirit, right? Go back and look at something that was truly a flop, something that was critically awful. I wanted that movie to be so good, Daniel. It's just like it's just like Fantastic Four. My goodness, I wanted it to be so good, and I tried so hard. And I watched that movie 3 times, trying to say, oh, maybe it's better the second time. It was bad. It lost money. That's a flop. But DC, they've done a wonderful job over the years. They stayed patient with it, remarkably patient, building it up to Justice League. And I think this is their big payoff.
I know, because I know the tweets are coming in. I'm going to answer to them right now, but they're going to say, so being patient is Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Wonder Woman. But then they shoehorned The Flash and Aquaman in. Why didn't they do a build-up like the MCU? Now, if they did a build-up like the MCU, people would whine that they're copying Marvel. They're doing something different. They're carving their own path. It's obviously going to work because, as we both agreed, Justice League is not going to flop. So it's this weird bind that it's constantly, finding itself in, and the fan base as well, because we hear this shit constantly, man, and it gets so frustrated because, yeah, people are saying, well, why don't you just enjoy, the movies? And it's like, it's impossible to, because all these people are constantly bringing these things up, and specifically to people like me who they know are DC fans, and they're saying, well, maybe they should have done this, or why didn't they do this? Oh, they're just copying Marvel. So I think that's incredibly frustrating, and I think that's my response to that incoming tweet.
I just don't think it's copying. I mean, it's Pepsi and Coke. I mean, they're both sodas, so you could say Pepsi's copying Coke, and you could say Coke's copying Pepsi. But at the end of the day, they're all superhero films, so there's going to be a lot of similarities. There's going to be it's a Venn diagram, right? So there's going to be a lot in the middle that's similar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would be like saying, well, you know what? Wonder Woman was copying Captain America because Wonder Woman was an origin story, and so was Captain America's first film. But I mean, it goes without saying that that's going to be what your first film is in a series. So I just don't think that anybody's copying anybody in this. I think that DC certainly has. If you look at it without the fanboyism, which I think is where those tweets are coming from, and if you disagree with me, please at me at Swordfish Show. I'd love to talk to you about it. But generally speaking, I think that a lot of that's through the eyes of being a Marvel fanboy or even a DC fanboy. Overall, DC and Marvel, they've had two totally different tones. I feel like Marvel was a little bit more serious with, I would say, the first Captain America film.
Which was the best one, in my opinion.
Oh, well, yeah, we saw that together in theaters, and I think we both were pleasantly surprised with it. And I went back and watched it several times afterwards, and I got to say, it's still my favorite Captain America film. The other ones were really good, but, that one was
I agree. Yep.
Tops for me. But other than that, they haven't been remarkably serious. Whereas with DC, there's a little bit more darkness to it, a little bit more serious tone. And I know some people will be critical of that, but again, do we want 1960s Batman? Probably not. That had a time and a place, and it's not now.
Absolutely correct. I can't disagree with you. But we're going to have a little bit more of that talk in just a minute. And that comes right after our Patreon shout-outs of the week. Very first Patreon shout-out goes out to John on Twitter at John72Tex, who has pointed out that there was actually a previous attempt to make a Red Sonja remake, and this comes off of last week's episode where we covered the upcoming Red Sonja remake after Wonder Woman's success. But this particular remake would have starred Rose McGowan, and it would have been directed by Robert Rodriguez. And John and his wife were both at the Q&A panel at San Diego Comic-Con in 2008 when they first announced this, and even sent over a picture of the T-shirt with like the mock-up of Rose as Red Sonja, or at least a promotional image of this movie that never got made.
Yeah, John was on that podcast, I think, 2 weeks ago, and if you're listening, John, you did a great job. That was a really fun episode to listen to. So I appreciate John supporting this podcast, because the more people that support it, the more content we get. And then next shout out goes to Brian. You can find him at Brian Shoop1. I'm sorry, not .com, at Brian Shoop1 on Twitter. And I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Brian. Shaup. Sorry, Brian. Brian Shaup1 on Twitter. And he's been retweeting a lot of Batman the Animated Series stuff, and that's always great. And then also images of Aquaman drinking in Justice League. I like that one.
Different scenes. Like, there's 3 different scenes of Aquaman. There's Aquaman in the back of a pickup truck drinking. There's Aquaman in that bar scene from that very first teaser that we got. And then there's Aquaman in the, about to dive into the ocean. And of course, he's finishing off that bottle. Like, fuck, man, that is so goddamn cool. Like, this is the coolest Aquaman in the world. Yes, drinking is fucking cool.
It's terrific. I love it.
I'm drinking right now.
Yeah, me too.
So thank you so much, John and Brian, for your support on Patreon. And you, Alex, I have the privilege of thanking another Patreon backer personally. And thank you so much, Alex, for helping out the show on Patreon. And it's because of, you, I think, were the very first Patreon backer for the show. And it's because of, your support from the very beginning, not only from Patreon, but also from listening and downloading the show from the start. It's kept Kelli and I going on the show and forever improving. Like, I never want to say the show is at its best. I want to forever improve, and it's with the help of you and other Patreon backers. Yeah,
I think maybe I was the first one. I have no clue. It's been so long. And what I would tell people is, for $1 a month, you can make a difference. So I started out, I think, at $1 a month, and then I think I gradually increased. I think I'm at $5 a month now, but the thing about Daniel and Kelli is they put pretty much all the money they get from that goes right back into the show, and they've made so many improvements over the years. So, even if it wasn't your week for a shout out, I want to thank every other Patreon backer, because this show has come a long way, and it's in part due to that. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Again, thank you so much. And you're topping it again. You're doing your best at, ending the guest list strong. And this has been, no offense to the rest of the guests, but holy shit, man. Like, that was an awesome Patreon backing and support there. That was I wish I could just take that clip and throw it up in a commercial somewhere on YouTube or on public television, public network TV.
I just want to get Sally Struthers to be like, for just a quarter an episode, you can support a starving Daniel and Kelli podcast.
If you do want to back the show, and if you want to become a shout out on the Reasons I'm Broke podcast every month, as you mentioned, for as little as $1 a month, 25 cents an episode, if you feel like you are getting 25 cents of entertainment, knowledge, comedy, whatever it is, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimbroke, and you can become a backer through there. There's different perks like getting the podcast early. There's a link at thereasonsimbroke.com and right here on the show notes for this episode. And a huge thanks to decalavenue.com for the help at the $5 decal reward tier. The final upgrade as well to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast is you can now leave us a voicemail. You can leave us feedback. You can record your question. I know I've gotten this from other Brokettes in the past, and that they wanted to call in to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast. They wanted to not just tweet out the question, which is fine, and we get those, but they wanted to actually be heard on the show. And thanks to SpeakPipe, we now have that ability. Like, you can go onto the link, and it's also in the show notes right here for this episode. But if you go to SpeakPipe, our special link to it, I believe it's speakpipe.com/thereasonsimbroke, and you can record a less than 90-second comment or question, and we may read it on the show. And our very first one was received on this episode. So you are a part of history, sir. You Alex, are about to be a part of this.
Yeah, I listened to this, and I think it's a really cool feature that you guys added to the podcast. I can't wait to see more.
And the first voicemail, the first question came from Bobby on Twitter @CubanSlim, who said it was very intuitive, very easy to do. You didn't have to go through any hoops to record a message. And let's go ahead and play it for you right now. Question from Bobby.
So this is Bobby @CubanSlim on Twitter. And my question is for both of you guys, but mainly for Daniel. I would really like to know what it's going to take to get you to recognize the MCU for what it is and stop being such a fanboy for DC. DC movies haven't done that well. And let's say Justice League flops. Then what? Are you going to finally admit it and not point at Joy Whedon? Or just admit it that it actually happened? Thanks.
So right off the bat, I don't know if you got the same impression, Al. I felt like he's holding someone hostage, maybe. Like like he's has someone I love. I don't know. But
Daniel, you have until midnight to reveal yourself, and if you don't, I'm gonna blow up the DC universe. I mean, I was shocked when I heard this, because Bobby's usually so level-headed and he sounds almost angry here. So, Daniel, I'm going to let you take it away.
He did start it off by saying that it was a question for both of us, but mainly for me. So I'll break it down, right? What's it going to take for me to recognize the MCU for what it is? Well, I recognize it for what it is right now. It makes a shit ton of money for Disney. It's a wild success. People love it. It's not for me. I don't think the movies are great. I like 5 of the movies from the MCU universe. I like Captain America 1, 2, and 3, Iron Man 3, and then the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are the 5 I like, which are well less than half of what the MCU has made. So obviously the MCU is not for viewers like me. It's, I like my standalone movies. I like movies. I don't judge them just as comic book movies, but also as regular movies. I'll put it right next to, for example, The Exorcist. So just like you've heard in the reviews in the past, I'll give something like Wonder Woman, I think 2.5 lassos of truth out of 5. and not, well, for a comic book movie, it was great, so 4, that's how Kelli reviews it, and that's where you get both perspectives. So that's what I recognize the MCU for what it is. I won't stop being a DC fanboy because I grew up with Batman the Animated Series, so they kind of got me at a very young age. I was immediately like, oh, Batman, I'm in. Those were the two things, were Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And since then, they've crossed over. So, there's a comic that crossed over Batman the Animated Series with the current Nickelodeon cartoon, but also with the Turtles. So, they've got me. I'm always going to be on the DC side simply because that's what I grew up with and that's what resonated with me. To answer to that is I'm not going to stop being a fanboy. And we've said it before, too. Like Kelli and I have said in the past, there is no question about it. We are a fanboy and a fangirl. We do not deny it. There's obviously a bias or an affinity for the DC characters, and it all started with Batman. So, as you mentioned, it's Batman and the rest of the friends. The whole DC universe, they can all be Robins, because anytime he teams up with anyone, they're all immediately Robins. Bobby did say that the DC movies haven't done that well. They've all been critical or financial successes. Critical successes, not as much. So if you're going to say that they haven't done well and you mean that by what people think, then you are correct. But the bottom line is box office and numbers, and that's what these studios look at. So no, the movies have actually been successful. They're making more of them. There's going to be a Suicide Squad 2, so they have done very well. In the 4 movies, hold on, we've got Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, and am I missing one? Wonder Woman, right? So in the 4 movies that we've gotten from the DCEU, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, BVS, and Man of Steel, the box office takings for those have already done half of the 20 plus movies that Disney and Marvel have done. That is not DC not doing well. That is that's a success right there. If you can make half of what Disney has made on all of its bulk of movies with just 4 of them, you're doing excellent. So, I do disagree on that end. If you meant it as a financial success, which again is the bottom line to these things, let's say Justice League flops. We know it's not going to flop. We already determined this. Joey Whedon, I am still pointing at it. Justice League is not going to be as good because it is tainted with Joseph Whedon. I will say that. And until they come out with, I guess, the original Snyder Cut, which they won't, as we've seen with Suicide Squad, I'm going to be with the agreement that Joey only made the film worse with his involvement, because I have not liked anything Joseph Whedon has done. And yes, I purposely call him Joey and Joseph if you're new to the show. That's his legal name is Joseph, so that's what I'm going to call him. I don't have respect for the guy. So the one thing I've enjoyed from him is Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. That was good, and that was done during the writer's strike. Everything outside of that, I did not enjoy. So yes, I will forever not be a fan of Joseph. I guess we'll see what happens with Batgirl, because he's going to be working on that. But yeah, that addresses all the points. I mean, not much that I can argue here, because facts speak for themselves, right? That really is everything. What's your take on this?
Well, what I would tell Bobby, and all joking aside from earlier, Bobby's a super cool guy. If you aren't already, follow him on Twitter. Good follow on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But I look at movies as art. I've always felt that film is art, and that goes from action movies all the way down to something that's Oscar bait, right? So I think MCU, DC, both of them are movies that I would consider art. I think art always stands on its own. You always look at it on its own. You don't compare it to something else. You don't, because it's not the same. So I think the MCU and DC universe, as I said earlier, have 2 totally different tones. I think both have been wildly successful from a financial standpoint. Yep. Obviously, one's been more successful from a critical standpoint than the other. However, what I will say is both fan bases are unbelievably lucky to live in the time that they live as comic book fans. They've got an unprecedented amount of content on something that they love that I don't believe there's ever been a point where superhero movies have been as prevalent or as frequent as they are now. So, I don't think, when I listen to your podcast, yes, it's clear you guys are DC fans. Me, I find myself in the middle. So I enjoy both universes, but I realize that, Guardians of the Galaxy is a totally different ride than Man of Steel. You know, like you're going to get two totally different tones, two different ways of filming, totally different idea on how to do a soundtrack. You know, I mean, let's just be honest. Guardians of the Galaxy might as well just be a sports bar jukebox in terms of the soundtrack, whereas Man of Steel pretty much had an original score. So I hate to compare them because, again, I view them as separate works of art, and art should stand on its own. You don't go into an art gallery, point at one painting and go, well, that Picasso, let's take that and put it next to this, I don't know, painting by Da Vinci or something, right? Struggling to find another name of an artist. But like, you don't take two paintings, put them next to each other and go, well, that one's better than the other one. They're two individual pieces of art. They stand by themselves. That's kind of how I feel about the movies. I don't think Justice League's going to flop. As far as Joey Whedon, who's, I don't know how he got Joss from Joseph. Still don't understand that one. I've thought about it. It's perplexing. Hopefully when they do his origin movie, we find out. But, you know, I think that I don't know that he's going to add a lot to Justice League, but at the same time, I'm going to disagree with Daniel. I don't think he's going to detract anything either. I think, you know, it's still going to be Snyder's movie.
That's true, yes.
And I mean that in a good way too, because I know there's a lot of people who I've seen on Twitter going, oh, it's a Snyder movie, so it's going to be bad. I don't get those people, but, you know, I do think this is Snyder's movie. It's going to be good. I would tell people, try to enjoy both. Try to enjoy both, man. Like, I went on a rant this week, and I really do mean this. I can't stand the Marvel and DC fanboy wars. To me, it's like the console wars from the early 2000s, where there was the Xbox crowd and the Nintendo crowd and the PlayStation crowd, and they all hated each other. And it's like, you're not being paid by either one. You're not a paid representative of either one. You have no financial incentive for one doing better than the other. So just enjoy both, you know. But that's just, you know, my take on the world. So
yeah, and the last thing I'll say about the feedback is, before we go into the future of Purple Swordfish, is you know, Bobby's a great guy at Cuban Slim. Don't send them like hate tweets or anything. Like, this is all in good fun. Like, he was our very first. He's a Patreon backer. He obviously loves the show, in spite of, you know, how much he may agree or disagree with what Kelly and I cover as far as the MCU or the DCEU. So it's all in good fun. It's all for discussion, and so don't take this as like, oh, this is really serious. Like, they're really like, no, it's for the sake of discussion, and obviously something he definitely wondered, and obviously something he definitely wanted to ask. So there's no ill intent here, but it does speak about
it's just banter between friends.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the way I would look at it. And I mean, if you send Bobby any kind of hate tweets, I will be there to tell you you're a jerk on Twitter.
I'll be right there with you.
Yeah, I will tell you you're a jerk, and then I'm going to block you to show you who won that war.
That being said, Bobby and I have a friendly bet going on, and Maceo might be a part of it. As of right now, Bobby hasn't agreed to the terms, but his initial thing about a week ago was that Justice League would not make as much domestically opening weekend as Thor Ragnarok. And which
I don't know about that bet.
Oh yeah, I was immediately like, yeah, I'll take that bet. Let's do it. And then it evolved into, which I think it was today at the time of this recording, where he said, well, it won't, you want to bet that it won't make as much as Avengers, and I'll buy you a beer. And I said, okay, well, you know, we got to agree to it. He said opening box office, opening weekend, domestically only. It's like, I agree with that, because if we do worldwide, there's different premieres throughout different countries. So you can't really measure it until like 5 months later after it's opened in all regions. So it's like, okay, I can agree to that opening weekend. I'll take the bet of Avengers, which is, you know, 200 and last time I looked at it, it was like 207 million. It might have been 20. Yeah, I think it was 207 million domestic opening. So I was like, all right, you know, I'll take that bet. Like, it's more, I guess, fair, or more like there's greater risk there, I think. And when I said, but let's agree to box office mojo. Like, let's have one source. of domestic box office openings. So, Box Office Mojo, let's do it. The Avengers, and then compare it to Justice League's opening weekend, then see if there's an eclipse there. But if not, Thor Ragnarok as well. And this is what I brought up too. So if Justice League passes Thor Ragnarok, that's 1 beer for me. If Justice League does not pass Avengers, that's 1 beer for Bobby. So I told him, like, what's going to end up happening is we're probably going to cancel each other out. Like, I'm going to owe him a beer and he's going to owe me a beer. So, like, we're just going to buy each other's drinks, sort of. Like, I don't know. That's probably what's going to end up happening realistically, I think. It'll definitely pass Ragnarok, but there's less of a chance. I don't know. It could happen. Maybe I'll have 2 beers. But I think what most likely is going to happen right now, before seeing the movie, before knowing what projections are, before the fucking tomato reading or whatever the fuck, I think it's more likely that it won't pass Avengers. But I'm still going to take the bet, right? Ragnarok, a beer. Avengers, another beer. And vice versa.
I think it'll probably cancel out. I mean, I think that Avengers is probably a better comp for Justice League than a standalone Marvel movie. So, I mean, you look at Thor, it did a little bit better opening weekend than Wonder Woman did. So, Thor, strong performance for a, single character movie. Well, I guess 2 if you count Hulk, but I think the Avengers is a better comp. And I think that, if you're DC, you want to see Justice League perform pretty close to, if not better than the Avengers, right? I mean, that has to be the goal. So yeah, the only other thing I would tell you, Daniel, is before you finalize any bets, you might want to give Riggs a call, and he'll be like, Daniel, I can figure this out for you. And he's got like a whiteboard in his apartment, and he's like, what did Medea's Boo 2 make opening weekend? And you give him the number, and then he predicts it within like $5.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable that he still did that. If you don't know, if you haven't heard that episode, go on YouTube or on iTunes and type in Trivia Time with Mr. Riggs, and you will find that episode. And it was unbelievable how he was able to predict with accuracy how much the Medea movie made based on Batman v Superman's box office. Like, that's unbelievable. And his rationale was, I needed to know what a successful movie makes to know what Medea makes. Unrelated categories, completely different films, and he fucking nailed it.
I mean, we've sent a man to the moon, but that has to be an impressive achievement of mankind. To be able to take a Medea movie and somehow transform that into a way to calculate a superhero movie and vice versa. I don't get it, but sometimes with genius to a normal layperson, it doesn't make sense. And I gotta say, it was genius. He earned his Lunchable.
He more than earned them. Yeah, holy shit, man. I should ask him first. That'd be cheating, wouldn't it?
It is cheating. It's basically counting cards. I mean,
oh man. So thank you so much, Bobby, for sending in the voicemail. Don't forget, you can also send in your personal voicemail based on the current plan with SpeakPipe. It is a maximum of 20 voicemails per month. So right now I've got 19 left, and it is less than 90 seconds left, or less than 90 seconds as far as the question or feedback or whatever. And link, once again, will be in the show notes. So let's go ahead and close out today's episode with you, the guest, Alex, Purple Swordfish. And actually, one thing I completely forgot, and I wanted you to do this, and I want it to happen one time, at least one time, hopefully not the last time. I want you to open how you do your show, but with the reasons I'm broke.
Okay, yeah. Welcome back to the Reasons I'm Broke. This is Alex, a.k.a. Purple Swordfish, and today we're playing Let's Answer Bobby's Voicemail, and hopefully he doesn't get any hate mail for it. You ever talk about something, this happens to me all the time on YouTube, side rant here, where like I'll get a comment and then I'll reference it in a video, and at that point it's on video. I can't like edit it out, right? Well, I guess I could edit it out, but you listen back to it, you're like, maybe I was a little too harsh. Sometimes I feel like that. Anyway, so yeah, man, my channel, like I said, easiest way to get to it, purpleswordfish.com. doing some really cool stuff on it. Lately, the uploads have just been atrocious in terms of frequency because of the work situation, but things have kind of normalized there, and hopefully that'll continue. So right now, if you're into Madden, we're doing Madden Ultimate Team content. I've got Bucks franchise content. If you're into Madden, you know what franchise mode is. I'm also going to be playing some Sonic Forces on there, South Park, The Fractured But Whole. And then I do streams here and there, and generally when I stream, I just kind of play whatever I feel like playing that night, because that usually makes for the best stream. So if you could check me out, I'd really appreciate it. Coming up on 1,500 subscribers, so if you want to help out there, be much appreciated as well. But yeah, that's pretty much my channel in a nutshell. Also follow me on Twitter at Swordfish Show. I'd love to talk to you. Even if it's just to tell me that I sucked on this episode, I'd love to hear from you.
The greatest guest of all time is what you wanted to do. The greatest guest spot was your goal here, sir. And let me tell you, the Sonic Forces videos, man, I can't wait for you to do it. I know LGG has done it, Lazy Gaming Guys, but I definitely want. You are the biggest Sonic fan I know, so I want to see what you think of Sonic Forces, because I know you're. The cool thing right now to do is to, even if you like Sonic Forces, is to be like, oh, well, look at this part. Look, this is wrong here. And I didn't like the game because it did this, but I'm going to keep playing it. So it's like, you fucking like the game, man. It's okay to like a Sonic game. Like, I know it's cool to hate them, but it's fine to like them. It's okay. And I know you will be honest with your thoughts on it. Even though you love the Sonic franchise, I know I can probably agree with you if I were to play Sonic Forces myself.
Yeah, it's going to be, and that's what I would tell you. If you like Sonic, definitely tune into my channel, because I have plans to, it's just something I want to do as a passion project, I guess you could call it, of sorts. You know, I'm going to play through Sonic Forces. I want to do a Sonic Mania playthrough, Sonic Generations playthrough, Sonic 06. I know people hate Sonic 06. I love it. Don't judge me. Don't at me, bro. I love Sonic 06. But, you know, what I will say about the Sonic franchise is, there's good and there's bad. And I mean, Sonic 06 had a lot of warts to it. But if you can see beyond those, I think there's still a good core game there. You know, would I say it's the best Sonic game ever? Absolutely not. But then, you know, every once in a while, Sega will completely shock you. You know, and Sonic Generations was a perfect example of that. Sonic Generations to me was as perfect of a modern Sonic game as you can get, going all the way back to the Dreamcast days. So, yeah, if you're a Sonic fan, there's going to be plenty of Sonic content on there. And I try to keep it honest, because if you're overly cynical, I know that's like the hot thing right now on YouTube, but I can't be that guy. I try to keep things as positive as I can.
And that's in itself a fresh take on Let's Plays and gaming and YouTube videos, and definitely appreciate that, of course. And that's obviously why I keep watching, why, you know, you have 1,500 plus, you're building up to 1,500 subscribers on YouTube. And, you know, the fan base definitely appreciates it. So, again, check him out, please. Subscribe to him on YouTube, purpleswordfish.com. It'll take you straight to his YouTube channel. You can subscribe on there. Not only just the Madden videos, but as you mentioned, you've got a lot of Sonic content coming out. If you like this episode, you will like his content on YouTube. It always blows me away, because, you know, I do every now and again, I do the Pokemon TCG Online videos, but it always blows me away how your commentary is so spot on and sharp and on point every single time for all these videos that you do. And it always shocks me, and I'm always in awe of it. So definitely check him out. If you enjoyed this episode, you will enjoy. You can get more of it times, 10, all the multiple times a week, and you will get that from his channel. Again, youtube.com/Purple Swordfish, and you can follow him on Twitter at Swordfish Show. Links will be in the show notes once again to his Twitter, to his YouTube channel. And then you can head on over, if you want to make it simple for yourself, head on straight to purpleswordfish.com, redirects you right to his YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for that plug, Daniel, and thanks for having me on the show. I really hope we can do it again soon. I know I was last on here in July. It's always a pleasure to be on here, so thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thank you so much for joining us. And once again, that is our final guest for this string of the Leo. I need Kelli here. This is where she gets, she's the clever one of the two of us. and she will come up with a name for the string of guests that we had. The Leonardo caused, that's our son for any new Brokettes, that caused, Kelli to go off on maternity leave. And she's been ready to come back. I think 2 weeks ago, she was like, "Hey, you need me to be on?" So I know she's excited to return. And next week, she will be back on, my regular host. Kelli will be returning to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast. And I'm excited to say that there will be a couple of, to many, maybe minor upgrades, but to me, a major upgrade because of the work that goes into, the things that we do, like a lot of the behind the scenes. I know you understand it because as a content creator, the work that goes into, minute changes to all these things. But, yeah, there's going to be, next week, I don't want to spoil it. So just tune in next week. You will find what changes there are.
Come on. I was so excited there.
You'll find out too. You're a listener.
I was like at half mast, Daniel. I was
So with Kelli's return, there's going to be at least one upgrade to the Reasons I'm Broke moving forward. So,
I'm looking forward to that, man. I'm looking because here's the thing that I love about your podcast. When you guys make upgrades, they're really noticeable. Like I know you guys moved to a new audio platform a long time ago, and man, you want to talk about the difference in quality. I mean, I'm not saying it was terrible before, but like you could tell it was top notch, man. So that's some exciting news. I'm excited for next week's episode. Kelli's coming back, upgrades.
Yeah, man.
Babies.
Absolutely. It's just one of those things where it's like we're now going to be on Spotify soon. So that's a big deal to us too. And then we were just on the our nominee on the podcast awards, which is all thanks to Brokettes, and all of that is part of like, okay, we need to continue to do more, but now it's like, okay, let's jumpstart something that I've wanted to do for a while. So, yeah, I'm excited. I hope, listeners like it. It is a change. So I don't know, but we'll see. Our fan base is very positive and responsive and great. So I'm excited to hear what you guys think. And, again, thank you so much, Al, for being on this week's episode, and we'll see. Let's do traditional. I'm Daniel.
I'm Alex.
And Kelli and I will see you next week.